Hey folks, it's Autumn from the blog of traditionallife.com, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to harvest rhubarb and especially how to use up tough stalks. I don't know about you, sometimes I fall behind on harvesting my rhubarb, and so I have some tough stalks that I'm going to be juicing in the kitchen today. So I'm going to show you how to harvest rhubarb, how to make the juice, and also how to make a rhubarb concentrate that you can just pour over ice. It's delicious. And we're going to show you how to preserve both of those things in the water bath canner. So let's dive in and let's do this. We're going to head out to the garden here, and these are two hugely overgrown strawberry rhubarb plants. Now generally rhubarb is used in desserts, you can freeze it, but as you can see here, some of these stalks are huge and oversized, and especially with this variety of rhubarb, they are way overgrown. So to harvest without damaging the crown, you want to grab your rhubarb stalk and pull to the side so that it pops loose and leaves the crown in the ground to produce more stalks for you. I am going through and just pulling out the giants that are too tough for anything except juicing. And then the young and tender ones will be left. I can pull those for desserts or for freezing later. And the plants can also produce some new shoots if I thin these out. There was so much rhubarb here. It was quite the haul, and this is just one plant. I'll show you here. They're very huge, tough, woody stalks. They're beautiful, and that red makes a beautiful red colored juice. But there is so much here, it's going to take a long time to process and put up all this rhubarb in juice form. Before I bring them in, I actually like to cut off the fan-shaped leaves outside. They're very cluttery and messy. They're huge, and so it's nice to just do this in the garden. The leaves contain oxalic acid, so you don't want to eat it yourself or feed it to animals or livestock. Cut the big fan leaf up at the top, and there you're left with a beautiful stalk of rhubarb. When I'm done, I like to just throw the leaves down around the base of the rhubarb plant so that it suppresses the weeds and I don't have to worry about weeding throughout the season. Bring your rhubarb harvest indoors and go ahead and spray them down to remove any bugs, slugs, dirt. You want to clean them up, and it's not a big deal. You don't need to scrub them, but just give them a good spray down. They've all been at least somewhat cleaned up. It's time to take them over to a cutting board, and I like to chop off the tough ends. Now I don't know if you actually need to do this for juicing or not, but it's a really good way to avoid the extra dirt that comes in from those bases. Line up a whole handful of them. You can just whack off the ends. It's actually quite fast, as long as your knife is sharp, like mine is not here, and the rhubarb isn't too tough. When you have those ends trimmed off, to juice the rhubarb, you're going to cut it to anywhere from, 4 to 8 inch lengths. It doesn't matter so much. You just want them down to size so they fit well into your stock pot. This is a 12-quart stock pot, which is about 3 gallons. We fill it to the brim with rhubarb and add water. Here I'm adding water. It comes about a third of the way up the pot. This is how we're going to juice our rhubarb. We add water, we steam and cook it, and then filter everything through a cloth. Really wonderful way to get that bright red rhubarb color. Put it on the stove, turn your burner up to a boil, and you're going to want to make sure you stir it from time to time. The rhubarb on the bottom will be in water, so it will cook faster. Go ahead and stir things up you cook for about 10 minutes, and you'll want to stir it 3-ish times in those 10 minutes to make sure things don't burn. Here you can see it's a mushy mess. It's been about 10 to 12 minutes. Everything is cooked. So we line a bowl with a cotton cloth. I'm going to pour all the rhubarb and the juice into it, at least all that we can fit. I will throw links below to the cloths I use, to the same size of stock pot that I have here. We're essentially making a old-fashioned jelly bag with this cloth, letting the juices all drip down through. Because this is such a giant batch, I'm going to pour it off and run more of the liquid through the cloth. There's so much here, it's going to take me 2 or 3 pour-offs to get it all filtered through that cloth. So we keep repeating the process. It's not complicated. Let the juices drip through, and when they've mostly stopped, I like to throw some wooden spoons over a bowl and then let the rhubarb solids just sit and let the juices drip. Whatever you've collected in the way of liquid can go into large jars. Here I have half-gallon jars, and I will put these in my cold room to bring them down to room temperature, and then you can refrigerate them. Or if you're ready to process them in the canner, you can do that right away too. I just have more rhubarb to make here, more rhubarb juice. So these are going to go back into the cold room and they will sit there and cool down. And I will probably actually do the canning tomorrow. That's probably how it's going to work here. We go back at it. We chop up more rhubarb, throw it in that stock pot, add more water, cook it down. Strain the solids out. You get the picture. Same pattern over until all that rhubarb has been worked through. These jars will also go back to the cold room, and at the end of that day, I have 4 jars here showing, but I actually had 6. The following morning, I decided to can it up. So I popped my water bath canner on the stovetop, set it to boil, and then I needed to warm up my juice. It's important when you're canning juice to bring it up to a rolling boil before putting it into jars. It will process much faster that way. So here we go with 6 jars, 6 half-gallon jars of rhubarb juice going into the stock pot. We also will add sweetener to this. Rhubarb is very sour, so I'm adding honey here. And actually, if you're interested in learning how to can with honey, I have a course. I will link to it down below that'll teach you how to exchange honey for sugar or sugar for honey in your kitchen. So no more refined sugars, just pure honey in your canned fruits, jams, jellies, syrups. These jars of juice will be filled to about 1 inch of the top. We'll add lids and then they go straight into the canner and will be processed as per my altitude. These giant jars, really, juice is the only thing that's safe to preserve in them because they're so huge. And I also have a very tall stock pot that I use as my canner. Your normal enamel canners won't fit half-gallon jars. They will not be large enough to hold them and be covered by the proper amount of water. That is something to be aware of if you try using huge jars. The rest of the rhubarb juice we're going to make a concentrate with. We simply boil and boil and boil. While the canner is going, we boil it all down. When our juice is finished, we pull it out, but we keep that rhubarb boiling at the back of the stove in the pot to boil it down into a thick concentrate. So here we go. It's been boiled down by about 1/3 of what it originally was. And then we ladle it into jars. This is going to be a thick, sweet drink that you can pour over ice. It will be canned, so it will be shelf stable, and it's a delicious treat on a hot summer day if you've been working out in the garden, been at the river, maybe doing yard work. It's amazing to come in and have this on hand where you can just pop open a jar, pour it over ice, and you have a refreshing summer drink. These little jars didn't need to be processed as long as the big jars. We're going to pull them out and let all of everything cool to room temperature before we test the seal and stock it away in the pantry. I think the rhubarb concentrate is my favorite, and I actually have a recipe over in the blog, which I will try to remember to link down below for you, so you can go get the actual amounts of honey to rhubarb juice, the amount of rhubarb you need to make a batch, all that stuff. Here we are the following morning. We are removing the bands from our jars, testing for a seal, and then we will put these in the pantry in my canning room on the canning shelves. These are going to be so fun to have on hand, whether we're doing a dinner, whether we just need a warm drink, whether we have guests. I know I can pop back, find something tasty and special that I can serve. These big jars take up So much space, but I don't care. That's what the canning shelf is for anyway. To serve, you simply fill your jar with ice or your cup and pour your rhubarb juice or concentrate over and serve. Comments or questions, leave them below, and I will see you next time.